The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark. James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came to Jesus and said to him, "Teacher, we want you to do for us whatever we ask of you." Jesus replied, "What do you wish me to do for you?" They answered him, "Grant that in your glory we may sit one at your right and the other at your left." Jesus said to them, "You do not know what you are asking. Can you drink the cup that I drink, or be baptized with the baptism with which I am baptized?" They said to him, "We can." Jesus said to them, "The cup that I drink, you will drink, and with the baptism with which I am baptized, you will be baptized. But to sit at my right or at my left is not mine to give, but it is for those for whom it has been prepared." When the 10 heard this, they became indignant at James and John. Jesus summoned them and said to them, "You know that those who are recognized as rulers over the Gentiles lord it over them, and their great ones make their authority over them felt. But it shall not be so among you. Rather, whoever wishes to be great among you will be your servant. Whoever wishes to be first among you will be the slave of all. For the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many." The Gospel of the Lord.
James and John, the sons of Zebedee, the disciples we hear in today's gospel, are two of the all-time heroes of the Christian faith. They walked with Jesus from the beginning, listened to the words of Jesus, saw his mighty deeds and miracles for 3 years. They heard Jesus preach about forgiveness and reconciliation. They heard him talk about mercy extended to all people. They watched him give sight to the blind, to cast out demons, and raise the dead to new life. Across the centuries, these two brothers have stood as prime examples of Christian discipleship at its highest and its best. But in today's gospel, shortly after Jesus foretells his own suffering and death, these two get it exactly wrong, asking to be placed at the right and left of Jesus when he comes in glory. This was nothing more than a brazen bid for prominence. They wanted the two top spots in the kingdom and actually had the nerve to ask for it. When the other disciples learned of this, they were offended and became angry with James and John. Had we been there, our reaction would likely have been the same. No doubt, The other disciples' indignation with these two brothers was due in part to the fact that James and John had beaten them to the punch by being the first to request a share in Jesus' greatness. Sincere Christians, we think, are not supposed to have that kind of ambition. After all, one of the first conditions of discipleship is self-denial. Jesus has said, "If one wishes to come after me, he must deny his very self." Surely, there is no legitimate place for personal ambition among the serious followers of Christ. But we should keep in mind that Jesus did not rebuke James and John for their request. There is no hint in the reading that he was in any way offended by their ambition. He simply told them that they were asking for something that he could not give. And he asked them if they could drink the cup that I drink. They, of course, said they could. Perhaps today's gospel title should have been, "Be Careful What You Ask For." Then Jesus called all the disciples together and tried to teach them the true meaning of greatness. So there's obviously a lesson for you and me. Our Lord did not discourage ambition among his followers. To the contrary, he spent much of his time teaching ordinary people that they were important. He urged his disciples to strive for excellence, telling them that their holiness must surpass that of the scribes and Pharisees, or else they could not enter the kingdom of God. But what these brothers asked for is what greatness meant to most people in that ancient world. And sad to say, that is what it often still means to this very day. Gain a little authority, get a little power, then use it. Push the little people around, get them to do your bidding, make them your servants. You give the orders, they carry them out. If people jump to your command, that means you are really something special. That too often is the concept of what it means to be a great man or a great woman. But Jesus dared to contradict it. He said to his disciples, "It cannot be like that with you." Then comes one of the most revolutionary statements that the world has ever heard. Listen to it. "Anyone who among you who aspires to greatness must serve the rest. Whoever wants to rank first among you must be the slave of all." No more radical idea has ever emerged in the ethical and social teaching of the human race. We find it difficult to put into practice, but in our finest hours we know that it is true. Have you ever thought about how strange it is that Jesus himself is considered to be one of the great men of history? Of course, we call him the greatest man of history, and he was also God. And we know that it is true. How can that be? He was a nobody from a carpenter's shop in the little town of Nazareth. He never had any money. He never held any office. He was hated by the establishment and ultimately died on the cross. As he said in our gospel reading, all he ever did was to serve and to help others. As he said, the Son of Man has not come to be served, but to serve, to give his life as ransom for the many. History ultimately bears witness to the stubborn truth that greatness will finally be measured in terms of usefulness. Any other than that is a cheap substitute that will never stand the test of time. Thus, Jesus stands as the prime example, as one who is incredibly right. even when his message seems to be out of step with common sense, he still turns out to be right. Jesus asks us to be humble, to turn and to leave behind what prevents us from living in harmony with the rest of community. And we see others who do this. We see people like Mother Teresa, who gave up the trappings of wealth and power to bring dignity to the dying. We are mindful of men and women who serve in foreign countries, living with the poor and the helpless, to bring the message of the gospel to those who have no power, who have no material wealth, who are disenfranchised by the selfishness and the greed that often drives our world. At the same time, we are all privileged to know people who do not ask, like James and John, what God can do for them, but what they can do for others to serve God completely. There are a number of opportunities here at Notre Dame where students, through the Office of Volunteer Services and the Center for Social Concerns, when they come to Mass in the chapels and here in the Basilica, they come here for a variety of reasons, perhaps to get a good job, perhaps because their parents or friends came here. But when they come here, even though they don't always get what they want, they get what they need. They often find exactly what God asks them, what God asks them to do, and they are transformed in a different way. In baptism, we were chosen as Christ's disciples. And each time we celebrate the Eucharist, we say yes to this commitment. If you are anything like me, you make mistakes. We are all capable of doing the wrong thing, of saying the wrong things. Or like the apostles James and John, of being unable to recognize what God asks of us. But I know and I have hope that God gives us what we need to be holy men and women, to be living saints today and witnesses for the people who come after us. Let us pray today in the Eucharist that we may open our hearts and allow Christ to give us the grace and the courage that each one of us needs to live in a way that serves and pleases God, to live as God calls us, passionately involved, genuinely invested in caring for people, and doing our best to serve them.